They called it Agent Orange, a harmless name for something designed to destroy life. It wasn't dropped from bombers or fired from guns. It rained from the sky in misty clouds, soaking forests, villages, and rivers. The United States government said it was a weapon of necessity. They said it would shorten the war, save American lives, and strip away the jungle that hid the enemy. But in truth, Agent Orange became one of the darkest legacies of the Vietnam War, a weapon that kept killing long after the fighting stopped. Why the U.S.? Did it? When American troops entered Vietnam in the early 1960s, they faced an enemy that didn't fight by conventional rules. The Viet Cong moved silently through dense jungles, using the trees as camouflage, ambushing patrols, disappearing into the green. To the Pentagon, the jungle itself was the enemy. So, scientists and military planners devised a plan called Operation Ranch Hand, a mission to remove the jungle. Their slogan was chillingly simple: only you can prevent a forest. Between 1961 and 1971, U.S. aircraft sprayed more than 20 million gallons of herbicides across Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Agent Orange was the most common of them, a mixture of two chemicals, 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. What the military didn't admit, or perhaps didn't fully understand, was that 2,4,5-T was contaminated with a byproduct called dioxin, one of the most poisonous substances ever created by humans. Even in microscopic amounts, dioxin can disrupt hormones, damage DNA, and cause cancer. At first, few questioned the plan: destroy the crops that fed the Viet Cong, defoliate the forests that concealed them, make it impossible for them to hide, to move, to eat. In Washington, it sounded efficient. In Vietnam, it became catastrophic. What happened on the ground helicopters and C-123 aircraft flew in tight formation, releasing long white streams of chemical mist. The spray clung to everything: leaves, soil, water, clothing, skin. Villagers who saw the planes thought they were distributing medicine, or maybe fertilizer. They ran outside to watch, unaware that death was falling from above. In total, more than 4.5 million acres of forest and 500,000 acres of farmland were drenched. Mangroves along the coast withered to skeletons. Rice paddies turned brown. Entire ecosystems collapsed in weeks. The impact on wildlife and the land. Agent Orange didn't just kill plants, it destroyed entire food webs. Birds vanished as their nesting trees died. Fish populations plummeted when rivers filled with toxins and dead vegetation. In the Mekong Delta, once a lush cradle of biodiversity, the spraying wiped out thousands of animal species, mammals, reptiles, and insects. Dioxin is extraordinarily stable. It doesn't wash away with the rain. It binds to soil and sediment, slowly poisoning everything it touches. Even today, more than 50 years later, scientists still find high concentrations in the soil around Da Nang, Bien Hoa, and Phuket air bases, where the chemicals were stored. The forests that grew back were not the same. What had been thick tropical canopy became thin grassland, invasive weeds replacing ancient trees. In some areas, nature never fully recovered. The human cost. But the deepest scars weren't left on the land. They were left on people. During the war, an estimated 2 to 4 million Vietnamese were directly exposed to Agent Orange. Many were farmers working the fields when the planes flew overhead. Others drank from contaminated wells or ate crops grown in poisoned soil. Within months, people began to show strange symptoms: rashes, respiratory illness, miscarriages. Doctors didn't understand why entire villages were falling sick. Then came the children, babies born with severe deformities, missing limbs, damaged organs, neurological disorders. Some died within hours of birth. Others lived, but with lifelong disabilities. Dioxin had entered their genes, altering life at its most fundamental level. The tragedy crossed borders. Thousands of American, Australian, and South Korean soldiers who served in Vietnam handled or were exposed to the spray. Decades later, many developed cancers, diabetes, nerve damage, and other illnesses linked to dioxin exposure. For years, veterans fought their own governments for recognition, to prove that their sickness was not coincidence, but consequence. The science behind the suffering dioxin doesn't behave like most poisons. It doesn't kill quickly. It lodges in fat cells, accumulating over time. Even in tiny doses, it can trigger changes in how genes are expressed, meaning that exposure can affect not just one person, but their descendants. Research has shown that the chemical can cause birth defects, cancers, liver disease, immune suppression, and reproductive problems. Studies of both Vietnamese civilians and U.S. veterans show similar patterns of illness, decades apart. It is, quite literally, a poison that passes through generations. The politics of denial and responsibility. For years after the war, the U.S. government denied that Agent Orange posed a serious health threat. The companies that produced it, including Dow Chemical and Monsanto, argued that the concentrations of dioxin were too low to cause harm. Internal documents later revealed they knew otherwise. Veterans filed lawsuits. Vietnamese victims appealed to international courts. Some compensation was eventually paid to American veterans, but Vietnamese civilians received almost nothing. In Vietnam, the damage was so widespread that it couldn't be hidden. Families living near old air bases still suffer higher rates of cancer and birth defects. Children today, born decades after the last spray mission, still bear the marks of a war they never saw. The efforts to heal. Cleanup has been slow, but not hopeless. Since 2012, joint U.S.-Vietnam programs have begun decontaminating several heavily polluted sites. Engineers use heat treatment technologies to break down dioxin molecules, and medical programs provide aid to families affected by exposure. It's a start, but it's like trying to heal a wound that never closes. You can remove the poison from the soil, but not from the generations it already touched. Today in the countryside of Vietnam, you can still find signs warning people not to dig or farm in certain areas. Beneath the soil lies the ghost of Agent Orange, and in hospitals, you can still find children, some unable to walk, some unable to speak, whose parents were exposed decades ago. Their lives are a living reminder that war doesn't end when the shooting stops. Agent Orange was meant to destroy forests. It destroyed futures instead. And until every contaminated field is cleaned, until every victim is remembered, its legacy will continue, silent, invisible, and deadly.